How much do you want? We're prepared to pay, so let's get this settled. I was taken aback by those unexpected words. I had just entered the hospital room when my sister-in-law, Hadley, of all people, made that shocking proposal. Before I could fully process what she was suggesting, she repeated herself, clearly indicating she wanted to fix everything with money. Wait, what? I exclaimed, stunned. Hadley, are you really saying that? Yes, I am, she answered flatly, showing no sign of hesitation. Explain yourself, I demanded, struggling to mask my shock. Hadley and her husband, Mark, my husband Brian's older brother, had come dangerously close to causing a disaster. Their open disregard for us was apparent, yet they seemed to think everything could be brushed aside if they just threw enough money at it. I won't accept any settlement, I said, my voice shaking with barely restrained fury. Hadley, you need to take responsibility. That's just unbelievable, Hadley shot back, rolling her eyes. You've always been so stubborn, Laura. You don't know what could happen if you push us too far. Don't test us. Fury bubbling inside, I struggled to maintain my composure and continued to argue with the shameless couple. The air was thick with tension until my husband, Brian, finally stepped in. I've had enough, he said in a cold, controlled tone. I glanced at him and saw a look on his face I had never seen before, something far more frightening than I had ever expected. Hadley sneered, Brian, you've always believed that money can't solve everything, but don't we all want it? I'm right, aren't I? Mark nodded in agreement. As long as there's enough money, any problem can be solved. Even Laura will stay quiet once she's compensated. Facing their smug expressions, Brian took a step forward and said, if money can solve everything, let's see if it can fix something like this. Their expressions faltered, and they eventually stormed out of the room, throwing a few insults over their shoulders as they left. As Hadley boldly claimed, perhaps everyone desires money to some degree. It certainly has the power to bring comfort and ease, almost like magic, but as Brian pointed out, there are things money can never buy, nor resolve. The near loss of me and our baby proved that without a doubt. I am Laura Bennett, 32 years old and 9 months pregnant. My husband, Brian, also 32, eagerly awaited the birth of our child. We had hoped for a peaceful and quiet celebration of this special time, but it wasn't meant to be, because someone couldn't stand the thought of us having a child. That someone was my sister-in-law, Hadley, who was married to Brian's older brother, Mark. She was a mother herself, yet she always seemed to involve herself in our business. From the moment I joined the Bennett family, I could tell she wasn't thrilled about me. At first, I thought it was just her distant nature, but over time it became clear she harbored resentment, and she'd do anything to assert her superiority. When I first met Hadley at family gatherings after marrying Brian, I realized she came from an incredibly wealthy background. Her parents owned a large company, and she was strikingly beautiful, carrying herself like someone who had excelled at everything she tried. People were drawn to her charm and grace. Unfortunately, her spoiled upbringing turned her into a selfish person who believed money could buy her anything she wanted. She made snide remarks about my modest upbringing and even suggested that Brian, despite being her younger brother-in-law, should respect her above all else. Please stop, Hadley, I pleaded during one of our heated arguments. Don't say things like that. We've done nothing to upset you. But her response was always the same, mocking indifference. Brian tried to smooth things over to keep the peace, and I did my best to avoid conflict. Eventually, Mark's job moved them out of state, so for a time, we had less contact. We hoped the distance would calm Hadley's hostility, but deep down, I feared it would flare up again once they returned. Years later, Hadley and Mark unexpectedly reappeared, flaunting their lavish lifestyle. Laura and Bree, she greeted us at a family event. Still struggling, I see, but I suppose you've managed to put together something resembling a normal life by now. Hadley and Mark lived in complete luxury, designer clothes, high-end cars, and an overwhelming sense of entitlement. She bragged about bossing around her friends, leveraging her money to make them run errands for her. Those who initially resisted eventually caved when she waved large sums of cash in front of them. She quickly built her own clique of mothers who then came to harass Brian and me with constant jeers and insults. It was clear she relished humiliating us. Then, one day, I discovered I was pregnant. Overjoyed, I shared the news with Brian, who promised to be a dedicated and loving father. Inspired by his resolve, I too found the strength to stand firm for the sake of our child and my own well-being. I hoped we could enjoy this special time free from Hadley's interference, but that hope didn't last. About 9 months into my pregnancy, I bumped into Hadley on my way home from shopping. My baby bump was now unmistakable. Wow, Laura, she sneered, eyeing my belly, you've really let yourself go. What on earth have you been eating to make yourself look like that? It's not what you think, Hadley. I've just gained weight because I'm pregnant. It's completely natural. If you don't have anything nice to say, please leave me alone. Apparently offended by my lack of deference, Hadley stepped in front of me, blocking my way. Oh, so your belly's bigger, and your attitude is too, huh? How dare someone so ordinary get pregnant? You're really pushing my limits. I tried to stay calm. I don't care what you think, Hadley. I just want a peaceful life for me and my baby. My words seemed to enrage her further. Excuse me, Laura, but how dare you talk to me like that? She snapped, grabbing at me as I tried to walk past. Her hand swung out, striking my stomach. The impact sent me tumbling to the ground, pain coursing through my abdomen. Gasping for air, I managed to call Brian. My last words, the baby, what should I do? Barely left my mouth before everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, warm blankets covering me, and 4 drip attached to my arm. 2 of my closest friends, Amelia and Clara, were by my side. Why are you here? I asked, groggy. Is the baby okay? They urged me to stay still. Laura, don't try to move yet. You need to rest. I attempted to sit up, but the pain was overwhelming. That's when I noticed that my belly had shrunk. A nurse explained that I had gone into premature labor after losing consciousness and had to undergo an emergency C-section. My baby was in an incubator but otherwise fine. Thankfully, Brian had arrived soon after my call, learning the details from Amelia, Clara, and the doctor. Following the doctor's advice to rest, I focused on my recovery, eagerly anticipating the moment I could finally meet my baby. However, the next day, an uninvited pair entered my hospital room, Hadley and Mark. Without delay, they made their outrageous demand. Let's get straight to the point, Mark said. How much do you want? Excuse me? I stood there, stunned by the audacity of his words. How much do you need to be satisfied? We're offering to pay, so let's just settle this now, Hadley said coldly. My mind went numb with disbelief. Wait, did I just hear you correctly? Hadley, are you actually serious? Of course, I am, she replied, as though her proposal was the most reasonable thing in the world. It took everything in me not to let the sheer outrage show. The nerve of them, their disregard for what they had put us through, and the near disaster they had caused, was incomprehensible. I can't accept a bribe like that, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. You almost killed me and my baby. You owe us more than money. You owe us responsibility. Hadley exchanged a look with Mark, her eyes filled with frustration. You're as stubborn as ever, Laura, she scoffed. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Are you really trying to make us angry? It's not about stubbornness, I snapped back. Stop treating us like we're beneath you, Hadley. Clara, who had been quietly observing, spoke up, her tone firm. How could you be so callous, Hadley? Laura's baby was in real danger. A single mistake could have cost them both their lives. Exactly, Amelia chimed in. And now you think throwing money at it makes everything okay? Shouldn't you be ashamed, not smug? Hadley scoffed, her nostrils flaring. You should be thanking us for even offering. Just take the settlement and be quiet before this gets worse for you. Know your place. It's obvious your parents never taught you any better. The tension in the room erupted, and soon we were all shouting at each other. We barely noticed when the door opened. Brian entered, his voice even and cold. I've heard enough, he said, his tone sharp. And there's no way we're solving this with money. The strength in his voice silenced everyone in the room. None of us had ever seen him this furious before, and it was terrifying. He turned his gaze toward Hadley, then Mark. Hadley, you've always thought money could fix anything. Seems like you haven't changed. Hadley laughed bitterly. Everyone wants money, Brian. It's just reality, am I wrong? Brian stood his ground, unwavering. Wanting money is one thing, but you've crossed a line. Some things can't be fixed with money. What you've done is proof of that. It was true. My baby and I were lucky to be alive, and Hadley showed no sign of remorse for what she'd caused. Mark stood by her, equally indifferent. I echoed Brian's words. Money can't fix everything. If it could, we wouldn't need police or lawyers. You both need to take responsibility. Hadley shot me a venomous look. You're more stubborn than usual, Laura. Aren't you supposed to be grateful? Take the money and stop complaining. Know your place. Mark added with a sneer. Weren't you taught any better? Exhausted, I didn't have the energy to keep fighting, but Brian refused to back down. He stared them both down, If you really believe money can solve everything, he said, let's put that to the test. The two of them were taken aback by his response. What are you talking about? Hadley hissed. What could a couple of nobodies like you and Laura do? And with that, they stormed out of the room, hurling insults as they left. Brian, what did you mean by that? I asked, confused but grateful for his support. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice calm but determined. Don't worry, Laura, I've got it covered. He exchanged a meaningful glance with Amelia and Clara, who both nodded. Clara gave my arm a comforting pat. I didn't fully understand what was happening, but I could tell that stress wasn't good for my recovery, so I chose to trust Brian and rest. The next evening, though, Hadley came back. Her voice could be heard before she even entered the room, shouting with rage. I know you're in there. Laura, come out and face me, coward. You set me up, didn't you? I can see through your pathetic act. Her yelling was so loud that hospital staff had to intervene. When Brian walked in, he saw her and asked, his voice even but filled with authority, what do you think you're doing, barging in here and yelling like that? Hadley exploded, her face red with fury. I know everything, Brian. Laura involved the police and lawyers in something so small. She planned all of this, didn't she? That's ridiculous, Brian shot back. For someone with delusions like yours, that's exactly the response I'd expect. You're disturbing the patients here. Leave now, or take your excuses to the police station. Security guards arrived and escorted Hadley out. I could hear her shouts grow fainter as she was taken away, and soon sirens wailed in the distance, signaling that Brian had called the police. Later that night, Mark called me. Please, don't make this worse, he begged, his voice desperate. I'm divorcing her. Just leave me out of this, okay? Please. His words meant nothing to me. If you're anything like her, that's on you, I said coldly, before hanging up and blocking his number. In the days that followed, I learned just what Brian had done. Our close friends, Amelia and Clara, had powerful connections. Amelia's husband was a police officer, and Clara's husband was a lawyer. They immediately stepped up to help, and without hesitation, Brian filed an assault and battery report against Hadley. Thanks to Amelia's husband, who had connections in the department, Hadley was swiftly arrested. Clara and her husband helped gather crucial evidence, including a recording of the conversation in the hospital that Amelia had captured. Their testimonies, along with mine, ensured a guilty verdict, and Hadley was ordered to pay a substantial compensation. To make matters worse for Hadley, Clara's husband was connected to the local press, and the story broke wide open. It turned out that her parents had been involved in embezzling company funds in the past to protect Hadley's reputation. The scandal caused the collapse of their family business. Mark's own reputation crumbled as well. He'd been riding on Hadley's wealth and status, and people quickly saw him for what he truly was. Gossip spread, and he was shunned by his colleagues. Eventually, he was sent far away to a different branch, and his marriage fell apart. Hadley was disowned by her family, and her children were taken from her. She was left with nothing, reportedly living in a park, relying on soup kitchens. Mark disappeared, some saying he fled by train, but no one knew where he went. Months later, I was discharged from the hospital, and both my baby and I were healthy and thriving. We received a large compensation from Hadley's side, and I couldn't help but be thankful that my daughter was growing stronger every day. This whole experience had brought Brian and me closer, and it had deepened my friendships with Amelia, Clara, and the others who truly cared for us. Our lives had returned to normal, and we cherished every moment of peace. One thing we all learned is that while money can offer temporary relief, it cannot solve every problem. Love, responsibility, and compassion are irreplaceable, no matter how much money someone offers. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Stay stunned.